Hey, I'm excited to have another editorial podcast with the Spoon Writers. How you doing, everyone?
Amazing.
Great.
We have Catherine Lamb.
Heyo.
Chris Albrecht.
Hey, Mike.
And Jen Marston.
Hi.
And we're going to start off going to you, Chris, because you wrote a story this past day or so about what essentially looks like a smart shopping cart by a company called Caper. And there's been all this movement around like making grocery stores more intelligent, allowing you to kind of walk in and out with your goods like an Amazon Go. And this Caper Smart Cart sounds like it's basically putting the intelligence into the shopping cart.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So ever since Amazon Go debuted, what was it, last year? Or was it the year before? Basically, it's a small store where you walk in, you scan your phone, and high-tech cameras and sensors monitor what you pick up and then automatically charge you for whatever you take out of the store. And there are a number of startups looking to retrofit grocery retailers with much the same technology, but they all involve like installing cameras in the ceilings, sensors on the shelves or whatever, but it involves retrofitting stores to enable that sort of cashierless checkout experience. And what Caper does is instead of installing all that stuff in the store itself, it puts it all in the shopping cart. So right now it uses a scanner, but the next version will have computer vision. So you basically just, as you're putting in tomatoes or pasta or whatever, the cart itself has like an LCD touchscreen on it, which is equipped with cameras for computer vision and some sensors, probably for weight, so that you can see, like if you grab 4 tomatoes, you hold the tomatoes in front of the cart and then you put it in, and it knows that you bought X amount of weight of tomatoes, or but any other kind of packaged good you put in there, and then it automatically just keeps track of everything as you're walking, as you're shopping. And the idea being that this is cheaper for retailers to adopt because they don't have to retrofit their store with thousands of little cameras. They can just buy new shopping carts, and the shopping carts then will keep track of everything you purchase. And they just raised 10 million, but it comes on the heels of, another company called Zippin. They just raised a strategic investment from a Brazilian retailer. Grabango earlier this year, I think, raised 12 million. So we're seeing this sort of a lot of movement in the cashierless checkout space go from sort of like, hey, concept to, oh, this is becoming a reality.
Yeah, it seems like there's a space race in terms of like investment and innovation around this. This Caper Smart Cart, when I looked at it, looked a little bit clunky. In terms of the implementation, it looks like they're putting what essentially sounds like a barcode scanner in the grocery cart. And what you're saying is it's going to move to more of a kind of a image recognition thing where, hey, it knows it's milk. My question is, will consumers be trained if, I'm half the time walking to the grocery store just kind of half asleep or just tired. Will it take too much work to actually for the grocery cart to know what I'm putting in, or can they make it so easily and friction free that it works well, for like someone who's just kind of half asleep grocery shopping?
Well, I think that there's a couple things to that. One, first is like, yes, absolutely. It should be a speedy process to where you shouldn't even have to pause as you're putting in that box of pasta. You should just be able to kind of throw it in and it should be able to see it and know it. Right. So it would be frictionless on your behalf in terms of walking through and filling in the cart. The second thing, though, is they plan on using the screen is to sort of provide recommendations. So it could see you're buying pasta and meat, and it would go like, oh, it looks like you're making a spaghetti. Here's a recipe for spaghetti that you might like. And here's a map to get all the ingredients in the store. So it's not just about what you purchase, but it's also creating a new sort of upselling opportunities for retailers via the cart. And you see this also in a more static way with AWM Smart Shelf, which does this via smart displays in stores. But so there's more to it than just purchasing.
So I should know more about this, but is there a screen on the shopping cart that would be telling you, like, here's a pasta recipe?
Yeah. There's a touchscreen built in by the handle. And so my things more would be around, and I've heard other people talk about this, is this sort of, the shopping carts need to be pretty robust, right? Like they get banged up around a lot, and customers are throwing in toddlers who would probably barf all over, the touchscreen at some point, right? Like, are they robust enough? And I'm sure, the people at Caper aren't dum-dums. They've all gone shopping before, right? So I imagine that they're thinking about all this, but it needs to be, in addition to being high tech, it also needs to be robust enough to handle sort of the wear and tear that they would experience. And then the question for retailers becomes then, well, how often do they have to replace these carts or the parts of these carts?
Yeah, how expensive are they? Like, you don't want a $500 shopping cart. I'm sure that like shopping carts in bulk are like, 20, 30, 40 bucks. I have no idea how much a shopping cart costs, but like
Probably a lot.
But this is,
I don't know if it's got a smart screen.
Yeah. Like these are going to cost a lot. The normal shopping cart you get at Albertsons, though, those probably aren't that much money. So, when you put 100 and 200, 300 of these in a grocery store, maybe not that many, how much is the fleet going to cost? And then maybe I start to think about, do you have like maybe a premium shopping experience for people who want to use this versus those who just want to use the regular shopping cart?
Well, and it also calls into question things like, well, what if I don't use a shopping cart? What if I use a basket? And Caper has thought of this already. Like I mentioned that before, and I think they have, that's certainly not lost on them. But yeah, I mean, I think the bigger story, though, is this is now we're not only seeing funding in the cashierless checkout space, but we're also seeing people go public with partnerships. So it's no longer just quiet pilot tests that are going on. Trigo Vision has Shufersal in Israel, and they're rumored to be working with Tesco. I haven't been able to get confirmation on that. And then the Giant Eagle chose Grabango earlier this summer. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the name. I also just don't want to butcher it. But the Brazilian grocery retailer picked Zippin for a line. So what's happening is that these things are that cashierless checkout is getting funded. People aren't necessarily scared of Amazon in this space because Amazon really just builds their own solution from start to finish, right? Like that's not necessarily something they're going to, at least for now, as they're building out their own stores, they're not going to go to a Safeway or an Albertsons and refit them to be Amazon Go stores. They have their own line of Whole Food stores and supposedly other grocery chains that they're working on. So anyway, watch this space is basically what this is further, what Caper's funding is further indication of.
Grocery tech is hot, man. I think we need a market map. Jen Marson, get to work on that.
On it.
Mm-hmm. Now, Jen, I also have a question for you, changing subjects. There was a story that you wrote about the California Senate passing a new bill, the gig worker bill, AB 5. And I think most of the stories I've seen have been about how it's going to impact Uber and Lyft, but it also impacts DoorDash and some of these third-party delivery services. And it could be fairly detrimental to the business model, right?
Right. So Assembly Bill 5 is actually it's an expansion of legislation that was passed in 2018 in the state of California. But what passed today is basically would treat these people, whether it's an Uber driver or a Dasher, which is a DoorDash driver, categorize them as employees, not contract workers. So that would entitle these people to minimum wage, workers' comp. It would allow them to unionize, all those things that go along with being an employee of a company. So the bill has amendments that it's gone back to Assembly, and the lawmakers are going to vote on the amendments. If that passes Assembly, then Governor Gavin Newsom has to sign the bill, which everybody I've talked to and everything I've read suggests that he will probably do that because he's a big supporter of it. It'll go into effect on January 1st, if that's the case. I think what the big question is how this is obviously going to add a lot of it's going to up the amount of money these companies have to spend on operations if they're paying all their workers as employees. And so these companies aren't necessarily profitable right now. And I think as we cover a lot, they're far from it. I mean, I think Uber, Chris, was it Uber who said on their earnings call that they don't expect Uber Eats to be profitable within the next year, at least?
Yeah, and they lost $5 billion last quarter.
Exactly. So these companies aren't exactly raking in bank right now. What I think is really interesting is if you add this with proposed delivery or proposed caps for restaurant commissions, which is happening in a different state in New York, but the two of those combined would they would really drastically alter these companies' ability to operate the way they do now.
Yeah, I mean, these companies, like you said, are not profitable yet. And now if they're going to have to pay healthcare or whatever, it's going to add a lot. I mean, I have mixed feelings on this, right? I feel like I'm kind of a fan of the gig economy. You know, I use ride sharing. I've used food delivery. I think it oftentimes meets people in a place where they may need partial employment or augmentative employment. You know, they're maybe not making enough as, their other job. Maybe they're working in a hotel and they want to do this on the side. So I think this provides sometimes economic opportunity for people who want to be like micro entrepreneurs. But at the same time, like it's also a way to basically not pay as much as other businesses. And so it is fairly disruptive to existing business models. So I can see both sides of this. I definitely think that the gig economy is under attack on the legislative side. And we'll see if it survives, because this is actually going to be a fairly big deal, I think.
Yeah, and I think we also have to keep in mind that even if this does pass, it's not the end of the story. I mean, I wrote this morning that one of the things Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash have done is they've basically pledged $90 million, I think it was, to get a ballot or to get a vote on the ballot that would fight this. If it passes. So, even if this goes into effect as law on January 1st, I think this is the beginning of the story. I don't think we're anywhere near the end. It's just a matter of what are companies like DoorDash going to do in the interim while they fight this out.
Without being an expert on labor markets, right? I know that like people take temp jobs through temp job agencies. Like I wonder if some point it'll land in a space where they make this akin to like a temporary job, right? Because you don't get benefits if you're, just kind of working a summer job through a temp agency. At least I don't think you do oftentimes. So maybe if one way around this is to say if there's a limited duration to the gig. I just don't know where this is going to end up, but it's going to be one to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we see the gig economy companies try and create some new work role or position that gets created so that they don't have to change their structure that much. I think that's definitely something that'll come up in the future.
Well, the other thing, sort of the specter over all this too, is just the sheer amounts of money that all these companies have raised, right? Built on sort of one idea of what what they have to pay out their workers. The DoorDash has raised, I don't even know how much, like Instacart have all raised over $1 billion, and DoorDash is expected to go public. So they've got a lot riding on this. And again, even Jen, you mentioned bringing up the DoorDash problem with the tipping and, what kind of jobs are being created.
It's interesting. The first .com boom was all about kind of very simple websites, pets.com. And we saw eventually that bust and the tougher companies came through on the other side. I feel like this kind of wave of internet innovation over the past 5 years has largely been around sharing economy concepts, whether it's Uber or Airbnb or WeWork, and all these companies are coming under greater scrutiny at the same time with the specter of a potential recession next year. So I think it's going to be a really interesting next couple of years and see what's happening to all these companies and what companies survive. Because as you said, Chris, there's a ton of money that's poured in. All the big kind of industries are fighting back from a regulatory and kind of every which way they can fight back. And these companies are coming under greater scrutiny. So I think it's going to be an interesting couple of years.
Yeah, I think it's another, it's just another example of big tech getting hit again, which is happening more and more. People aren't necessarily happy with the way the actual human being, what the effect on the human being is because of all these technologies and how they're handled or not managed very well right now. So, yeah, I agree with you, Mike. I think it's going to be I think there's going to be a lot to discuss in the next year or so.
Speaking of disruptors and big companies hitting back, well, this is not really a story about that. It's about Impossible being a disruptor in the meat industry. And
that's a good transition.
Yeah, and they are coming out with a product that reminds me of the Beyond Ground Beef Pack, which I've just tried recently. At least they're teasing a new product that looks like they're coming out with what essentially is a 12-ounce pack of ground beef replacement. Tell us a little bit about this story, Catherine.
Yeah, so to be clear, they have not Impossible, to my knowledge, has not stated that this is 100% the product they're going to do, but they basically put out this tweet that said, "Can you guess the first city to find us on shelves? We'll give you one hint." And the hint is it's somewhere that smells like palm trees, which first of all, I'm like, what do palm trees smell like? But second of all, that narrows it down. And in the little promo video, it also showed a little pack of 12-ounce. It says Impossible Burger made from plants. It looks like ground beef. It looks like the Beyond beef, more particularly. So we can sort of put together some pieces and say that, A, Impossible is likely going to hit retail with this ground beef product. At least we're assuming it's just one product. You know, they could do that and their patties simultaneously, but this is a little bit more unique of a product. So I think it makes sense for them to come out with this first. They're basically just competing with Beyond Beef at this point. And in terms of palm trees, and if anyone else has any thoughts on this, please tweet us or something. But my thoughts were either LA or Miami. Palm tree cities, they're both hip. They're both centers of cool food innovation, and there's arguments for both. So LA, closer to Impossible headquarters and production facilities, which are in Northern California. LA is just also like always on the cutting edge of like cool new food stuff, It seems like a nice sort of like branding place to make that launch. And then Impossible is also rolled oh no, that's actually Florida. So that's kind of the LA argument. And then over on the other side, we have Miami, the other side of the country. And Chris brought up the point that could be an interesting place to sort of launch this because Miami is a hotbed of just general retail innovation. While not specifically food stuff related, there's a lot of like self-driving cars and robotic warehouses for grocery. And also Florida has been one of the first states to see a couple Impossible products with their fast food partners, such as the Little Caesars Impossible Supreme Pie. And it was one of the first areas to get the Impossible Whopper after its trial in St. Louis. So arguments to be said for either. If I'm placing a bet, I say LA. It's a gut feeling, but also I just think in terms of like a branding perspective, it makes a little more sense. There's also all those celebrities over there, and people love to Instagram, and I don't know, it just seems a little bit more on trend, but
I'd say LA is my bet. I also think that they probably wouldn't put a mock-up or a picture of what looks like to be 12 ounces of very specific packaging, 12 ounces of Impossible beef, unless they're going to come out with that. And my guess is that that's the tease, right, and that's what it's going to be, right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely that. I think the other question is just, are they going to simultaneously do other products? But I'm guessing it's just going to be this one in one city first. And so we have it narrowed down to 2. So moral of the story, we know a lot more about this retail launch, which we've been hearing rumblings of for over 6 months. Then we found out it was in September. Then we found out it's September 19th. Everyone mark your calendars. And now we're finding out that what the product is going to be and which two possible cities it'll be.
You think there will be people hanging out at the grocery store and the place? Is this like, Chris, you remember when Windows 95 came out and everyone hung out in the stores waiting for it to roll out? Are we going to see like the Impossible beef version of that?
I love that you, of all like the Apple product launches that have happened in the past decade.
Oh, I'm going back further than that, man. Come on.
You go to like Windows 95. Like, oh, that's it. Because what? That's because Chandler from Friends and was on the promotional stuff.
And I'm the one I make fun of you for your references. I go old school tech. So.
I think it's funny. I'm kind of wondering if it's going to be Florida, just because then they could work out the kinks without having high profile Instagrammers around to pick up any missteps, or celebrities or whatever. Right. I'm not definitive on that, but if you think about just Beyond Chicken at KFC in Atlanta, getting a bajillion people outside, right? Like every place that these things have hit has become, there's been a frenzy, might be too strong a word.
I don't know if it is too strong a word.
Well, yeah, well, see, I don't know. The problem, I think, and we kind of went back and forth with this, I think, Catherine, when I put out the newsletter this week, which is what I'm afraid of sometimes is we write about this stuff all the time. Mm-hmm. So we're super into it. But what I don't know is sort of, how much of a bubble am I in versus how much do people really care, right? So what is, once you get outside sort of the food tech circles, do people really know Beyond and Impossible that much? I know a lot of people who still haven't tried it.
Yeah.
And I'm explaining it to people a lot, like, oh no, it's made from this and it's really good and you should try it. And they're like, oh, okay, I've never had one before.
It certainly seems in social media, like just kind of anecdotally, it's made the kind of the transition to like kind of to the broad mainstream in terms of people. Everyone's kind of trying it for the first time. At least I'm noticing on Facebook, right? Of my non-tech related or food tech related folks on my Facebook feed, everyone's like talking about, hey, I just had an Impossible Burger.
I also think it's different being in retail because with the KFC launch or Burger King, these fast food places are like doing their own marketing for it as well. And we also knew like specifically which stores it was going to launch in. So there was a lot of buzz around that. But with something like this, retail, first of all, we don't know which store it's going to be in. We don't know if it's going to be Whole Foods, it's going to be Kroger, it's going to be some sort of really niche local spot. And also it's just like a little bit less sexy to like be lining up at the grocery store to get something as opposed to like lining up at KFC where there's like media and they're handing out samples and like we don't know what sort of fanfare will be happening around this, but I can't imagine it'll be on the same level as these sort of fast food launches. Could be wrong, but I am curious to see if Impossible will, like how much in advance they'll give out this information. You know, will they say it's happening right now at this one Whole Foods in Miami, or will they say tomorrow, this time, this place, like there will be this big festivities and a food truck and, you know, fireworks. So we'll see. We also don't know how much it's going to cost, and we don't know. I guess those are the two big question marks, where exactly it's going to be and what it's going to cost.
Yeah. The Beyond Ground cost $10 at my store. Mm-hmm. For that, I don't even know. Whatever their package is. I don't know how many ounces it is. 12 as well. Yeah.
I have to say, I'm much more excited about the prospect of a 12 ounce of ground versus like a stack of patties. I know that you guys, Chris and Catherine, have tried the Beyond Ground. I just had it for the first time last week. I thought it was really good, much better than the beef patties that I've had from Beyond. And I made tacos and I made hamburgers with it, and I like it. And I was excited to try it, and I'm excited to try the Impossible.
Yeah. Oh, it's also 16 also. Sorry, I was wrong. 16 ounces.
We made a Beyond lasagna the other night, and it was delicious.
I've done pasta bolognese with Beyond, and it was excellent.
It sounds really good. Well, we know my stance is that I think it's too meaty, which means it's doing a good job.
You're wrong. Oh, sorry.
Okay. I don't feel like this.
I thought that's where we were going. Sorry, my fault. My fault.
We can duke it out privately, Chris.
Meanwhile, while you guys are duking it out, I'm going to tee up the next story, which is a story that is about our startups. We're going to have at Smart Kitchen Summit in just 3 or 4 weeks now. We announced the Startup Showcase finalists, 12 of them next for this year. And what I really like about this list, if you guys, I'd love to hear what you guys' opinion are. It's just how diverse the companies are. We have everything from a countertop chocolate maker to a couple companies doing food waste, anti-food waste kind of concepts, to like new kind of cooktops with kind of smart technology built in. I'm really excited. And you guys know that I kind of get overexcited about chocolate. So the Cocoa Terras kind of has me a little bit too excited, but I'm not on the judging panel. I purposely don't put myself on the judging panel because I'd probably choose chocolate. But what do you guys think of this list?
First of all, there's a couple that we've covered before on the spoon. So, you know, Sticks Fresh makes a sticker that can extend fresh fruit shelf life by 2 weeks. I think that's super cool and practical, kind of in the vein of like a Soggy Food Sucks, the company that won last year. That's like this relatively low tech, not to say not complicated, but not, you know, some sort of fancy robot thing that could have actually a pretty widespread effect and like actually help you in the everyday in the kitchen. But then there's also some sort of really futuristic ones that excite me like this. And I'm not sure how you say it, but Anrich 3D, which is a 3D food printer that will extrude food items to match your exact nutritional requirements and taste preferences. And like obviously a sticker that goes on your fruit to help it stay for fresher for longer is something that we're going to see a lot more quickly than a home 3D food printer that matches up with your nutritional profile. But it's just cool to see the breadth of the startups that are thinking about how we're going to be eating food in the future.
Chris, there's a couple robots on there you have to be excited about.
I am more than just a robot person. I'm a 3-dimensional character in this story. I have a backstory. I have a purpose. I have needs and wants. I kind of want to see the Milo. Is it Milo or Milo?
Milo, I think.
I'm a little skeptical. It's a very stylish blender that's cordless and silent and efficient and beautiful, according to their own press materials. And it connects to your phone. Although, honestly, I don't know if you need that. But I'm wondering if this is an example of where they can take something mundane and make it beautiful and make it like an object that people want, right? Like a blender is a blender, or is it? And I think that's sort of interesting. Also, I want to see if it has sort of the power necessary to really make a smoothie to pulverize fruit and vegetables and ice and all that stuff. I don't need my blender to make soup or anything, but I also would like it to not sound like a 747 is taking off in my kitchen in the morning. And if I can make a smoothie while the rest of the house is asleep, because I get up earlier than everybody else, that would be amazing. So I am really intrigued by that one.
What about this barista robot? I mean, you've covered quite a few barista robots. How's this one stack up?
The Botrista?
Yes.
I will have to see, right? Like it is, are they bringing the robot?
We'll see. I think and what's interesting about that, I think it's tea focused, right? I think it's like, basically focused on craft
yeah.
Beverages,
I think I wrote about them.
So TBD. Oh.
Yes. So what they have started with is I did write about them. See, this is what happens when you write so many posts in a day. You kind of forget about the ones. What happened yesterday is gone. This was at the end of August. Botrista does this. They're a B2B play. So they're starting with a drink maker for restaurants, and it's connected to the cloud. So they have a bunch of recipes, and restaurants can lease this machine, or actually I think it's free is what it is. And then they pay $1.40 to $1.90 per drink. And the hook with Botrista is that not only do they provide the hardware and you download and a subscription service for the software, but then you also get the ingredients through them. So, if you want a fusion tea drink, they provide all of it. So this I'm interested to see. And if they bring it, I'll be interested. I'm definitely interested in tasting what they have, but they can make anything from like mocktails to juices to, fusion teas and stuff like that. So I am curious. They are in trials, I think, in a couple areas in California. I want to say.
And I think their first product before this, they actually have a business, I think, already with like basically, don't they have like a boba robot or something like that? I think they're already doing like providing products for boba tea places, and this is like their second.
Yeah. Well, the people or the guy is from Tesla. He worked on the assembly lines. He was like one of the lead engineers, I think, that put together the robots that built the Model S and X and 3 for Tesla. So I definitely am interested in and this is their sort of foothold to get that. His rationale was every restaurant needs drinks, so they're starting with a drink machine, and then from there they'll be able to expand into other types of food prep.
I think the model's tried and true, right? Like I was just listening to How I Built This this week's episode, and they had the story of one of my kids' favorite product, Dipping Dots.
I heard that one.
Yeah, and the Dippin' Dots licensing model, when he figured it out, was basically, you give the equipment and then like they charge for the ingredients to make these Dipping Dots, which I recommend listening to that podcast if you're like a food nerd like me. But so I think it's pretty cool. So just speaking more broadly, these 12 companies, like we have all these great companies, like you said, like the sticker company, Catherine, robotics, restaurant oriented ones, home cooking ones. So it's just a great list. I'm excited about it.
Mm-hmm. Good variety, I think. Something for everyone.
Yeah.
And a good opportunity to mention that Smart Kitchen Summit will be
in just 3.5 weeks. And if you want to come, I encourage you to come. Use the discount code podcast for 25% off tickets. If you want to see these startups, they will be there. We'll also have some future food startups doing interesting stuff that will be we'll be announcing this week as well. So, and just lots of other great programming. So, and you can meet all of us. You can meet every one of us is going to be there. So,
October 7th and 8th in Seattle, Washington.
Chris will be dancing the robot. Mm-hmm. Right, Chris?
Yeah. Spoilers.
Whoa.
So much for my big finale.
Don't pigeonhole me. Chris is thinking. Sorry about that. Jen, will you be dancing?
Maybe. I mean,
That's a no.
That is a definite no. There's no dancing.
I do surprise people.
I'll be dancing in my head with excitement.
I plan to moonwalk on a stage. So that is my big kind of entrance. So keep an eye out for that.
Well,
Chris,
now you're going to have
Yeah,
to.
exactly.
I hear Chris moaning. All right. Once again, Mike overdoing with the robot sounds. But once again, thank you guys for coming on the podcast. This was a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.